Hi, my name is Lily, and I am 28 years old. But the story I am about to share doesn't begin with success. It starts with a betrayal so painful that it still haunts me. When I was just 8 years old, I lived with my parents in a small, rundown house in a poor neighborhood. My father worked odd jobs, and my mother stayed at home, but money was always tight. I didn't have many toys or fancy clothes, but I was happy in my own little world. I thought my parents loved me, even though they often talked about how hard it was to make ends meet. One day, everything changed. I remember it clearly, even though I was so young. My father told me to pack a small bag with my clothes. He said, "We're going on a trip, Lily." I was excited. I thought we might visit someplace fun, maybe even see a park or a carnival. Little did I know, this was no family trip. We arrived at a strange house in a different part of town. The people there didn't smile or say hello. They just stared at me like I was something to be inspected. My father talked to them in hushed tones, and I noticed the man handed him a wad of cash. My stomach felt strange, like something bad was happening, but I didn't understand. Then my parents left. They walked away without saying goodbye. I chased after them, crying, "Mom,
Dad,
where are you going?" But they didn't turn around. They didn't even look back. That was the moment I realized they had sold me. Sold me for money. The people in the house weren't kind. They made me clean, cook, and do whatever they told me to do. I cried myself to sleep every night, wondering what I had done wrong. Why didn't my parents want me? Why would they leave me with strangers? But even as a child, I had a spark of courage. I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I had to escape. And so, one night, when everyone in the house was asleep, I ran away. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I would go or how I would survive. But anything was better than staying in that cold, unfriendly house. I ran through dark streets, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea where I was or what might happen to me. All I knew was that I had to keep going. Eventually, I found a small, broken-down hut near the edge of the city. It looked like no one lived there, but when I peeked inside, I saw an old man sitting by a tiny fire. His clothes were ragged, and his face was lined with age and hardship. "Who are you?" he asked in a gruff voice. I was too scared to speak at first, but something about his kind eyes made me feel safe. "My name is Lily," I said, my voice trembling. "I ran away. I have nowhere to go." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded.
come in.
"You'll be safe here." That night, I slept on a thin mat next to the fire. For the first time in weeks, I didn't cry myself to sleep. I didn't know it then, but this old man would change my life forever. The old man introduced himself as Sam. He didn't have much, a small hut, a few pots and pans, and some worn-out clothes, but he shared what little he had with me. He cooked me a simple meal of rice and beans, and it tasted better than anything I'd had in weeks. "You can stay here if you want," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But you'll have to work hard and follow my rules." I nodded eagerly. I didn't care about the rules. I just wanted a place to belong. For the first time, I felt like someone cared about me. Sam wasn't like my parents. He didn't talk about money or complain about how hard life was. Instead, he taught me how to survive. He showed me how to gather firewood, cook simple meals, and keep the hut clean. He even taught me how to read and write using old newspapers he had collected. "You're smart, Lily," he said one day as I struggled to read a headline. "You just need a chance to prove it." I didn't understand what he meant at the time, but those words stayed with me. They gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, I could be more than the scared little girl my parents had abandoned. Over the years, Sam became more than just a caretaker. He became a father to me. He told me stories about his life, how he had once been a carpenter but lost everything after an accident left him unable to work. Despite his hardships, he never let bitterness consume him. "You can't control what happens to you," he said once, "but you can control how you respond." Sam's wisdom shaped me in ways I didn't realize until much later. He taught me to be strong, resourceful, and kind, even when life felt unfair. As I grew older, Sam encouraged me to dream bigger. "You're not meant to stay in this hut forever," he said. "You're going to do great things, Lily." His belief in me was unwavering. It pushed me to work harder, to dream of a future where I could escape the cycle of poverty and build something better for myself and for him. When I turned 16, Sam did something that changed my life. He used the little money he had saved over the years to enroll me in a local school. Education is the key to freedom, he told me. With knowledge, you can go anywhere and do anything. At first, I was nervous about going to school. I didn't have nice clothes or supplies like the other kids, and I worried they would laugh at me. But Sam reassured me, it's not about where you start, Lily. It's about where you're going. And he was right. School wasn't easy, but I loved learning. I soaked up every lesson, determined to make Sam proud. I stayed up late studying by candlelight and worked hard to catch up with my classmates. By the time I graduated, I was one of the top students in my class. My teachers praised my determination, and I started to believe that I could achieve anything I set my mind to. With Sam's encouragement, I applied for a scholarship to a prestigious college. I'll never forget the day I received the acceptance letter. Sam hugged me tightly, tears streaming down his weathered face. I knew you could do it, he said. You've made me prouder than I ever thought possible. Leaving Sam to attend college was one of the hardest things I've ever done. He had given me everything, love, guidance, and a second chance at life. But he insisted I go, saying, "This is your time, Lily. Go make the most of it." College was a completely new world for me. I was surrounded by people who had grown up with privileges I couldn't even imagine. Fancy clothes, expensive gadgets, and the confidence that came from never worrying about their next meal. At first, I felt out of place, but I reminded myself of Sam's words. It's not about where you start. It's about where you're going. I threw myself into my studies, working harder than ever. I took part-time jobs to cover my expenses, juggling work and classes with little sleep. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to make it. I wanted to succeed not just for myself, but for Sam, who had sacrificed so much for me. In my junior year, I stumbled upon an idea during one of my business classes, a concept for a tech startup. It was ambitious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it could work. My professors encouraged me, and with their guidance, I entered a national competition for young entrepreneurs. Winning that competition changed everything. The prize money gave me the capital I needed to launch my startup, and suddenly, doors I never thought possible were opening for me. Investors took notice, and within a few years, my small idea grew into a multi-million-dollar company. Through it all, I never forgot Sam. I visited him every chance I got, sharing my successes and asking for his advice. "You're doing great, Lily," he told me. "Just remember to stay humble and help others the way you've been helped." One day, not long after my company hit its first $10 million in revenue, I received an unexpected call. It was from someone claiming to know my biological parents. At first, I didn't want to hear it. I had buried the pain of their betrayal long ago, focusing instead on the life I had built with Sam. But curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet them. When I walked into the small diner where we had arranged to meet, I almost didn't recognize them. My parents looked older, thinner, and worn down by life. They smiled nervously when they saw me, but their eyes widened when they realized who I had become. "Lily," my mother said, her voice trembling. "You've grown into such a beautiful young woman." I stared at them, trying to reconcile the people in front of me with the parents who had abandoned me so many years ago. "We're sorry for what we did," my father said. "We were desperate, and we made a terrible mistake. We've regretted it every day since." Their words felt hollow, but I kept my composure. "You sold me," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You left me to fend for myself without a second thought." "We thought you'd be better off," my mother whispered. "We had no idea. No idea that I'd survive? That I'd succeed despite what you did." I interrupted. "Well, let me tell you something. I did survive. And not because of you, but because of someone who actually cared about me." I stood up, ready to leave, but then I paused. "I'm a millionaire now," I said, watching their eyes widen in shock. "And I owe none of it to you." That day, I walked away from my parents for the second time, but this time, it was on my terms. I realized I didn't need their approval or their apology to move forward. My life was no longer defined by their betrayal, but by the love and guidance I had received from Sam. I returned to the hut where it all began, now rebuilt into a comfortable home for Sam. "You're the reason I made it," I told him, handing him the keys to a new car I had bought for him. Sam smiled, tears in his eyes. "No, Lily. You're the reason you made it. I just gave you a little push. Today, I run a successful company and use my platform to help children in need, just as Sam helped me. My story is proof that no matter where you start in life, it's possible to rise above your circumstances." As my success grew, I realized I wanted to do more than just build my company. I wanted to give back to the world in the same way Sam had given to me. He had taken me in when he had almost nothing, yet he shared everything he had. It was time for me to carry that kindness forward. I started a foundation dedicated to helping children who had been abandoned or were living on the streets. The foundation provided shelter, education, and opportunities for a better future. It wasn't just about giving them a place to live, it was about giving them hope just as Sam had given me. Sam, though hesitant at first, agreed to become the honorary chairman of the foundation. "You're the heart behind this, Lily," he said. "But if it means helping kids, I'm in." The foundation quickly grew, gaining support from people who resonated with our mission. We opened shelters in multiple cities and partnered with schools and organizations to ensure every child we helped had access to quality education. At every opening ceremony, I shared my story. I wanted people to know where I had come from and how a single act of kindness could change a life. If it weren't for one man who believed in me, I'd say, none of this would exist. Sam often stood beside me during these speeches, his weathered face full of pride. "You're doing great things, Lily," he would whisper. "Just keep going." One day, while visiting a shelter in another city, I was approached by a young girl. She couldn't have been older than 10, and her clothes were torn and dirty. She looked at me with wide eyes and asked, "Is it true? Were you like me once?" Her question hit me hard. I knelt down to her level and said, "Yes, I was. But someone helped me, and now it's my turn to help you." The girl hugged me tightly, and I felt a surge of emotion. This was why I had worked so hard, to make sure no child ever felt as alone and helpless as I once did. Years later, I heard that my biological parents were struggling. They had lost everything and were living in poverty, much like they had been when they sold me. Part of me wanted to ignore the news. They had made their choices, after all. But another part of me remembered Sam's lessons about kindness and forgiveness. I decided to visit them one last time. When I arrived, they looked frail and defeated. My mother's eyes filled with tears when she saw me, and my father looked too ashamed to speak. "I didn't come here for apologies," I said. "I came to tell you that I've forgiven you. Not for your sake, but for mine. I've built a life I'm proud of, and I won't let anger hold me back anymore." They nodded silently, tears streaming down their faces. I didn't offer them money or support, but I left knowing I had closed a painful chapter of my life. Sam passed away a few years later, peacefully in his sleep. I was heartbroken but determined to honor his memory. We renamed the foundation after him, calling it the Sam's Hope Foundation. At his funeral, I spoke about the man who had saved me. Sam was more than a father to me. He was my hero. He taught me that love and kindness can overcome any obstacle, and I will spend the rest of my life living by those values. Today, as I look back on my journey, I am filled with gratitude. I went from being a child sold by her parents to a millionaire with a purpose. But more importantly, I learned the power of kindness and the importance of giving back. My story is not just about me. It's about the people who believed in me, the lessons I learned, and the lives I've been able to touch along the way. If there's one thing I hope people take away from my story, it's this. No matter how dark your circumstances, there is always a way forward. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in you.